Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Lordy, lordy, I keep doing my research and the focus on reality comes in a little bit clearer. Got some new books in the mail. Lustania, however you say that, the ship. Finally, the startling truth about one of the most fateful of all disasters at sea. So what do we know? On May 7th, 1915, what was going on back then? I think World War I was underway. The United States wasn't in the war yet, but preparations and promises were made. The German U-boat 20 torpedoed and sunk the unarmed passenger liner Lustania off the old head of Kinsale on the southwest coast of Ireland, killing some 1,200 men, women, and children, many of them Americans. The world raged at the barbarity of the Kaiser, the King of Germany, and the German people. And the act did much to precipitate the latter entrance of the United States into World War I. But the real truth of the disaster has never been revealed. So I wonder how they got the United States into World War I, into the Great War, they called it. But the real truth of the disaster has never been revealed. With the explosive and meticulous documentation, London Sunday Times correspondent Colin Simpson unearths the story of a monumental exercise in political cynicism. Some of these words trouble me. To be cynical, a record of arrogance, ignorance, and expediency that indicts dozens of high government officials in both England and America. Well, I can tell you, when you talk about these things, even like 9/11 or the entrance into World War II, there's politics going on behind the scenes. Groups like the Illuminati banksters or the Zionists back then were controlling things. They controlled the USA money supply ever since they took re-control of it on December 21st, 1913, 6 months before World War I started. Using many Hiltero classified documents from the British Admiralty, the U.S. Treasury, and Connard Company, in addition to the personal papers of the English-American trial judges, the German U-boat captain, and the chairman of the Connard, Simpson demonstrates that the Lustania was unstable, improperly designed, badly staffed, and loaded with munitions for the Allies. So if there was a war going on and it was loaded with munitions, would you think the enemy would sink it so that the enemy of the country receiving the munitions would not use them against them? And that the British Admiralty, with high American complicity, to an extent created the situation in which the ship could be sunk. Winston Churchill, then First Lord of Admiralty, to speculate about what would happen if a passenger ship were sunk by Germans with powerful neutrals aboard. Item: the Lusitania, then nominally a passenger ship, was in actuality an armed auxiliary cruiser of the Royal Navy, carrying thousands of tons of military material as well as military personnel, a fact that England and America later vehemently denied. So there's more on this book I just got in the mail about World War I and the deceptions. Some other books I got in the mail. The Final Secret of Pearl Harbor. Yet again, the United States and Britain and other countries wanted to go to war with Germany in World War II. But you see, things work out like this. Nobody wants to be accused of starting the war. So what these politicians, elitists behind the scenes, the Zionists, the Illuminati, secret societies, the Zionists, of course, include a lot of the Jewish people who want to obtain the Palestinians' land to create the state of Israel back then. So anyways, if they can't start a war, they can cause a lot of agitation and suffering to a country, so that country will attack. And that's what they were doing back then. They wanted a war, and they needed Japan to attack. So they even falsified and deceived a lot of people, including the military leaders in Hawaii of all those ships. And they were supplying the United States, Britain, and other countries with the Zionist and Illuminati banksters. They were supplying weapons to China and cutting off all kinds of trade with Japan, forcing Japan's hand to attack Pearl Harbor. You know, it makes you wonder, what would any one of us do if somebody were to go out there and cut off the electricity and put a big blockade on the roads so we couldn't get any food, or your kids couldn't go to school? I mean, at what point would a person get agitated and go out there and fight for their rights? So you read these books and you learn these things. I've been reading this book. And I did make a video recently on this one, how Britain initiated both world wars. And it pretty much details the deception about World War I and who wanted the war and how they managed to get the whole war started with Germany. I will be making another one on this because it does say on the title of this book, how Britain initiated both world wars. So I've got a ton of material on this topic. Got another book in the mail. John Toland, Infamy, Pearl Harbor and its Aftermath. Another one I've been looking at that I have to make a video on. I've been reading. There's a couple hundred pages printed out there. From Major Jordan's diaries. George Racy Jordan. So he was a major during World War II. And according to this material, 200 pages here I've been reading, and it's already all tagged. You can see my little tags here. Apparently, for all practical purposes, the communist, Russia, World War II, the Zionist, the elites who controlled Britain, were completely in control of the leaders in the United States. You can go look this up. And Russia had top priority for supplies and weapons and everything else, according to this book, giving you a short synopsis. So I've been reading all this stuff. They had complete control over the USA's leaders and Russia had priority over even the USA military and even the people, military armaments, copper, metals, chemicals, food, farming supplies, tractors. You can't even believe it, including luxury items, swimming pools. Russia had priority at the behest of the president and other people in charge of America during World War II. Ironically, the same thing was going on in World War I. These other forces had control of our country and our president. And billions of dollars of stuff were shipped to Russia, who were clearly communist at the time and killing millions of people and infiltrating the United States and spying on our government and training camps to promote communism, i.e., that's Judaism, the Zionist flavor, which is also, in my opinion, mystery religion of Babylon, secret societies, i.e., Satanism, Kabbalism, cultism. So, short story. Major Jordan's diaries. I've been reading this. I'm up to page 200 and something. Russia had a free hand in the United States, and they were even loading up trucks at the patent office and copying all of USA patents by the truckload and shipping them to Russia in Major Jordan's diary. And of course, I just made a video on this one, brainwashed into slavery, about how the communists were even training people here in the United States. And I'm finding out, believe it or not, that prior to World War II, they were also responsible for the Great Depression, which was worldwide. These are the kinds of pictures back then of the people suffering. So if you check the dates and you read these things, you can clearly see that the Illuminati, banksters, Zionists, and elitists wanting World War II and did all they could do to push the opposition, at that time it really wasn't the enemy, into attacking them so they could say that they were the good guys and start the war. They did that, in my opinion, from my research, if you've been watching my videos, both times, World War I and World War II. And we all know, many of us, that 9/11 was also a planned event and blamed on certain people in certain area like the Middle East. And many countries were overthrown, millions of people murdered or moved out of the area, immigrated into Europe or Britain, United States, even in the middle of the night on planes converted to passenger planes, parcel company planes, getting contracts from these elitists, shipping them into major airports, busing them to rural communities in the United States, probably the world. So there is a plan. So that's all leading up to what this book review is about. As I keep studying this stuff, and this particular book was recommended to me, The Bloody Red Streak, Trefor David. And I did find that free online at archive.org, and believe it or not, many other places if you search his name, The Bloody Red Streak. And I'm almost finished reading this book. As you know, I highlight stuff. Pardon me and my camera here. Just want to show you what I do here. So I've been reading this, and after this opening I just made, all those things I explained, and of course this is series 240 in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. 240. That's 240 authors. A lot of those authors published more than one books, so it's probably something like 260 or 270 books, 600 videos, almost. Maybe it's one shy with this one, posted on the Rick Miracle YouTube channel. Many of those, more than half of them, are 2 hours. So think about that. 600 plus 300, 900 hours of video material that I've made on YouTube since making videos September 2013. After I was reading books for almost 10 years in 2005. After a few things happened, and I woke up a couple years after 2001, i.e., 911. I could see, I had this intuition. Some people are just aware and ask questions, and a lot of people don't want to know what's going on. But if we don't know what's going on, the plethora of things that have already happened, too numerous to mention, presidents assassinated, presidents of many countries assassinated, and a lot of death and suffering and mayhem, economic destruction in countries all over the world. Somebody is working feverishly at bringing about a global world order. And the hard part for this whole topic for people to understand is the who, what, and why. And when you take the who, what, and why and you plug everything together with all the physical things going on, physical, get this camera's backwards, physical, doing my left hand, I'm seeing the right hand, so it confuses the brain. And that's important to understand. This is all about confusing the brain. So you get the left hand, the physical reality we live in. And then, of course, the right hand, everything from Zionism to Kabbalah, Islam religion, Christianity religion, Buddhism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, shamanism. But you got to take the two things together and integrate them to be able to get this picture, how they both mesh together. All the aspects of our physical reality and the spiritual reality, the invisible world. And when you do this, you kind of can say, wait a minute, if I see the whole picture, maybe I can understand and answer the question, who, what, and why. And I believe I'm getting closer at doing that. So I was reading this book, The Bloody Red Streak. And of course, I guess after what I just said, a lot of people can probably understand what the bloody red streak means. Communism and Judaism are one and the same, according to this author. Page 13. So I thought I would start reading from there and throwing in my 2 cents and see if this makes sense to you. And this is a difficult topic to talk about for a number of reasons. One, of course, the whole thing, the solution, the answer, the understanding of it is confusing. Make no mistake about it. The powers that be have been altering the history books, and what really happened. So I think if people look at this in the correct way, anyways, a lot of people understand the winners of the wars write the history and teach the public their side. The losers, well, if in this case of Germany, they get TV programs made up about them like Hogan's Heroes, making them look like fools. So who do you think is the good guys and the bad guys? We're all taught Adolf Hitler and the Germans were all evil. But when you start investigating and you see who controls Britain and the banking supply and the money supply and the politicians in the United States and Britain, and also how these leaders, even the media, newspapers, were keeping the truth from the citizens of Britain, the citizens of countries all over the world, the citizens of the United States. Huge propaganda campaigns going on. So could it be, dare I say, that the bad guys won the war and portrayed themselves as the good guys and brought us Hogan's Heroes and all those movies with John Wayne and everybody else, making everybody feel good about America saving the war? Weirdly enough, America and Britain had been at numerous wars prior to World War I. Too many to count. Germany hadn't been in a war in 50 years. So what is the truth? And apparently, like over in Britain and other countries, you ask these questions, you're putting yourself in serious danger. And I suspect it could be the case now. People from my research in the past 14 years, plus or minus, have been a lot of incidences of people mysteriously dying or outright being assassinated or discredited, accused of things, set up, disappeared. We all know about that, the new laws they passed where people can be arrested and the government doesn't have to be accountable. They just turn up missing. Presidents assassinated, President John Kennedy in Central America, South American presidents, people all over the world suffering. Most of the manufacturing and other money-making opportunities after Israel was created in 1946, a lot of the those things, manufacturing, etc., moved away to China and other countries where it was cheaper labor. And it caused a lot of financial hardships in the United States. Notwithstanding the fact the Great Depression completely aligns with all the activities of the communist and the Zionist, with all the countries all over the world suffering in the Great Depression also. A lot of people are kind of myopic. They only see the small portion, their own little world. They don't see the big world. All the other countries that were experienced this economic chaos. When these Illuminati, Zionist, Jewish people, and other elites of secret societies were controlling the banking systems and the money supply and the politicians, because they had a plan. They had a desire, a goal, and had been working at it for a couple hundred years. It was a global world order, a new world order, and they were anti-Christian, and they had a new age religion. And you say, Rick, how can you say those things? Well, I can say that I have 600 videos posted on YouTube, maybe 598. So one or two more will be 600. 800 or 900 hours. I've been reading books and magazines and press releases and research material on the internet and watching videos nonstop since 2005, when I decided premeditatively to do this because something was wrong and I had reached a big zero birthday in my life, and I just felt I wanted to know who, what, and why. And I think I'm getting closer to it. So then I get to this book, and one of my commenters recommended this particular book, The Bloody Red Streak, as well as many of the other books I've gone over lately. Several of them I found out because of the comments my viewers put on the comment section. So thank you for that. And also remember to send my videos to other people, download them, put them on hard drives, because you never know what might happen and the information will be lost. That's a concerning thing to me. All that work for naught, when I think it's important people try to understand the truth. And I'm not going to say by a long shot that I am perfect and I know everything. Of course I don't. But I can read these books that I go over page by page and have a conversation, and people can have a pencil and paper and take notes and go look up the material. And if you go over enough books and enough material long enough, you're going to have an aha moment also, like I did. Communism and Judaism are one and the same. And I did have a couple revelations recently And if communism is Judaism, and the Judaism that's trying to take control of the world is Zionism, and apparently if they're anti-Christian, then like Revelation 2.9, 3.9 in the Bible says, plus other places, they truly are of the synagogue of Satan. Now think about that. And if the material they promote is the New Age is material from the synagogue of Satan. And all the symbols and statues of devils, Satan they're putting in Oklahoma, Detroit, Arkansas, and all the other symbolism, TV programming, movies, uh, Shiva, the goddess of destruction, projected onto the Empire State Building, a giant goat projected onto the Hoover Dam, and many, many, many other examples. The tunnel opening in Switzerland, where they actually had a demon with horns dropping from the sky, people seemingly naked on a railroad car, groping each other like an orgy, which is part of this New Age religion, and Eurovision in Europe, and the satanic ritual shows, Super Bowl halftime shows, Emmys, Grammys, and all kinds of symbolisms and cartoons and animated shows and movies. Too numerous to count. You can go on the internet and YouTube and just put in these keywords, and there's again a plethora of this material, almost endless. So, at what point does endless equal when somebody would say, hey, wait a minute, I need to wake up? Is communism Judaism? And why did President Donald Trump recently say the United States recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, fulfilling this biblical prophecy, where Jews who call themselves Jews but are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan, which is in Revelation in the Bible? Is the Bible lying? And of course, the people promoting the communist manifesto or education, the transformation of America and the world, they don't want people to discuss these things because you will be accused of being anti-Semitic. So I get this book from this guy, Trefor David. So of course, the first thing I do is I want to know who Trefor David is. So I have a little material on him. Trefor David was a Welsh soldier, public servant, activist, author, and dedicated patriot. Well, that sounds good. But what happens when you're a soldier, public servant, activist, author, and dedicated patriot? What happens to a lot of people who are sharing information that the elite who want a global order don't want shared? Well, they get disappeared, arrested, assassinated, discredited, ruined, drugged. I've gone over books on this. Electrodes plugged up to their head and their brains were emptied, destroyed. He mobilized with the Glamorganshire Yeomanry, some area over there in Britain, I suspect, at the beginning of World War I, later transferring to the Royal Field Artillery, where he served 2.5 years in France during the war. He was a member of the Bregand Urban District Council for 2 years, followed by a stint of 1 year at the Glamorganshire County Councillor. He was dedicated local activist, sentenced to prison no less than 7 times for his tireless campaigns against graft and corruption. So apparently he was a public servant on the inside and probably had a philosophy as a Christian and saw the things going wrong, like a crooked police officer will take the envelope full of money, but you always have those few cops who say, no, that's not right. And they make TV programs and movies about these guys who resist the corruption. So this guy appears to be one of those guys. In 1951, he published the canonical book here, the bloody red streak, exposing the Jewish connection to international communism. So I had to say all of that to get to the beginning of this book. Wow, was that too much to say or what? Wait till you hear what I'm going to read. Communism and Judaism are one and the same. Other similarities between communism and Judaism are, see, a lot of people don't know the truth here. Number one, the hatred of Christianity. And again, I'll throw in my 2 cents. From my research with the Freemasons, they have a opposition, hatred for Christianity. Call it a disdain or wanting to rid Christianity from the world. Call it whatever you want. And of course, not all Freemasons. But the bottom line, if you read the material and you go to the higher levels, you find that they are in league with the communist and the Judaism. They have a hatred of Christianity. The Russians, far from hating Christianity, are one of the most religious races on earth, religious enough to point to the point of superstition. The anti-Christian campaign in communist Russia is Jewish. So after World War I, when the Bolshevik Jewish people invaded Russia, with the elites of Britain and America, this was kept from the peoples of the world, invaded, went on in there like espionage, and abducted the Tsar, the leaders of the Russia, and his family, and probably took out a lot of other undesirable people in this revolution. I wouldn't really call it a revolution. It was an espionage event taking over a country covertly. And so it was controlled by the Zionist, Jewish, Bolshevik, Illuminati folks. And they were definitely anti-Christian. And there's even evidence in this material, plus other material I've gone over, were admittedly 25 million in a popular Israeli newspapers material. 25 million Christians and other good people, Russians killed, and the Christian churches destroyed, but not the Jewish people or the Jewish temples. So the Jewish people, Illuminati, Zionists, apparently into a synagogue of Satan type of religion, took over Russia. And it doesn't mean that it includes all Jewish people, because a lot of Jewish people, Benjamin Friedman, Rabbi Marvin Antelman, Henry Mackau, PhD author in Canada, have written a lot of material and exposed this stuff and tried to get it out there. And those particular videos of mine are either censored or restricted or even eliminated on my channel. So when I read this, I have more information than the average bear, the way the saying goes, or the average person. So the anti-Christian campaign in communist Russia is Jewish. The Jews have hated Christianity ever since they got Christ crucified by Pontius Pilate. And another thing I was listening to in some of my videos I've reviewed, there was something saying that the cross is offensive to Jews, and I did go look that up, and I did find examples of that and showed it in previous videos. So the bottom line is there is a worldwide battle going on, and it is certainly anti-Christian and pro-Jewish, and those are the facts. And according to this book and many others, it's hard to deny it. So listen to this author and who he was. Remember, this guy here served in the war, served in the district council, and tireless campaigns against graft and corruption. So he was working for the local governments and served in the military and was sentenced 7 times to prison for his campaigns against corruption and graft, trying to expose the bad people. So you can see where he might have been looking into these things. He wasn't trying to promote communism. He was trying to promote and share some things that he found out that were wrong. He was an observant person and had some kind of jobs in the military and a counselor for the government where he would see these things. So I'm kind of skeptical largely when I look at this. I want to find out who the person was. And if it was one book or two books or even 20 books or 40 books, you probably still couldn't convince me of what I'm about to say. But when you get to 240 books, 600 videos, 14 years of research, you start to get an inkling that maybe some of this material is probably correct if you're paying attention to what's going on in the world. And all these books I showed at the beginning of this video, and many more I have. Let us compare a communist on Christianity with a Jew. The Soviet Education Commissioner, Lunchersky, defined the communist attitude to Christianity as follows. So this book was written back in 1951, after World War II. And he fought in World War I. So he's pointing out with this one Soviet Education Commissioner, Lunchersky, defined the communist attitude to Christianity as follows. So apparently he's quoting what this one Jewish Soviet education person said. And this person said clearly, we hate Christianity and Christians. I was thinking about this today. This is the 18th of December, Tuesday, and next Tuesday is Christmas. So I guess you could call these people anti-Christmas people too. Anti-Christmas people. Think about that. If you want to bring this home to thinking. They preach the love of our neighbors and mercy. This is what this communist leader said. Accusations against Christians. They preach the love of our neighbors and mercy. That's what Christians teach. Yes? No? The answer is yes. But what he says, which is contrary to our principles. So a lot of these people get caught saying things, probably things they really didn't want to admit. Christian love is an obstacle to the development of the revolution. Christian love is an obstacle to the development of the revolution. Down with the love of our neighbors. Down with the love of our neighbors. They don't like that, the stuff that Jesus taught. What we want is hatred. And I've been saying this for so long. It is love versus hatred. Just imagine two boxers. One guy's name is love, and the other guy's name is hatred. And their personalities equal their names. So that's what we have here. We have this battle going on our planet. Love versus hatred, according to this author in 1951. We must learn how to hate, and it is only then that we shall conquer the world. And so they used hate and confusion with 9/11 to get the Americans and other people to go along with the destruction of all those countries in the Middle East. So what do you think? All those countries deserved it? And it's a sobering question, when you have to think what the answer is. Is there anybody watching my video who will leave a note in the comment section that said, yeah, Rick, all those millions of Arabs, well, they deserve to be killed like they were. And all those Germans and all those people in World War I and World War II, they deserved it. And all those Christians from Britain and America who died too, they deserved it. And all those peoples in Central America, South America, American Indians, Chinese, all over the world who were killed by these elitists for their resources and everything else, money. Yeah, they deserved it. Which which of us would ever agree to that? I don't think too many sane, decent, human people would agree to that. But people who are not mentally balanced or into Satanism have to be somehow psychologically damaged, mentally ill. But they've turned it around and said that Christians and other good people are the ones that are actually mentally ill. Very confusing thing to think about, but it's the reality of it. And these are the words in this book. I'm not making it up, I'm just reading it. Pause your computer. We hate Christianity and Christians. 1951, even the best of them must be looked upon as our worst enemies. They preach the love of our neighbors and mercy, which is contrary to our principles. Christian love is an obstacle to the development of the revolution. Down with the love of our neighbors. What we want is hatred. We must learn how to hate, and it is only then that we will conquer the world. Millionaire Hollywood Jew playwright Ben Hetch, who went wild with delight every time a British soldier was murdered in Palestine, writes on page 20 of his book, A Jew in Love. One of the finest things ever done by the mob was the crucifixion of Christ. Intellectually, it was a splendid gesture, but trust the mob to bungle. If I had charge of the situation, he says. Can you imagine me reading this stuff? If I was in charge of executing Christ, he says, this famous millionaire Hollywood person. What does it say he did there? Millionaire Hollywood Jew playwright. He says if he was in charge of executing Christ, I would have handled it differently. You see, what I would have done was had him shipped to Rome and fed to the lions. They could not have made a savior out of mincemeat. Do you see what we're dealing with here? Why did this author write this book? You can find it free PDF online in many places. And then if you take this book alone, you scratch your head and you go, this is crazy. This can't be true. And there's a lot of material in here I read. But when you take it and you account for 260 books I've gone over, 800 or 900 hours, and many other people's videos on YouTube exposing all this, even the elites clamoring. You can see all the words on the internet if you search globalism and global currency and global religion and all these things. All this information is easily available to verify. Do not be fooled by the Christianity of the communist Dean of Canterbury, Dr. Hewitt Johnson. While Jewish hooligans were desecrating Christian churches and holy places in Jerusalem, between 200,000 and 300,000 pounds worth of damage was done, according to the Times of 1 July 1949. So after World War II, and a few years after the Zionists finally got the Palestinian land, 1946, to create the State of Israel. This was 1949, just a couple years later. Hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds worth of damage was done in Jerusalem. So the attack on Jerusalem, on the people who were there, began right after they were given Palestine to create their country. Dr. Hewitt Johnson said in an interview he granted to the Jewish paper Labor Israel, 6 May 1949, I do not think there is any ground for the claim that the whole city, Jerusalem, should be neutralized to safeguard Christian interest. I had much rather trust the Jews to look after them. I believe they would be the most honorable custodians. Number two, that was number one. Communist, Jewish people, Zionists, hating Christians. Number two, the Jews, by their Bible, the Talmud, are allowed to cheat, rob, and deceive Gentiles. This is what their holy books tell them. Communists rob Gentiles of all they possess by simply, sorry about this. Communists rob Gentiles, and Gentiles are anybody who's not a Jew, of all they possess by simply nationalizing all property of them on pretense of giving it to the workers, but actually they keep it for themselves. So communism is a huge lie, a deception, a charade, a charade. They intend to rob your savings off you by a capital levy, and eventually your house or farm by nationalization of the land. And this would be what we call today Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, sustainability, global warming, climate change. You're using all these issues to legally suppress the rest of us and take everything. They've done it before. The material's in this book. You can go look it up. You do not have to listen to me read from it. You can download a copy, 33, 34 pages. Read it in the privacy of your own home, and you decide. Look up the things this author says. The communists, by Lenin's direct orders in his book, Left-Wing Communism, an infantile disorder, are allowed to use lies, deceit, and subterfuge to non-communists. No value, therefore, should be placed on the descriptions of Russia and the communist Eastern Europe and the communist China by communists who have returned from carefully conducted tours there. So when people go there and they describe things, or you see it in the newspapers, we are not to believe any of that stuff. And think about it. Why would Russia have gone bankrupt not too many years ago? And all of the Russian resources and assets and companies were all privatized. Who do you suppose got all of that? I'm sure it wasn't doled out fairly to the citizens in Russia. So if they bankrupted the country and these communist, Illuminati, Bolshevik, Jewish people were in charge, I would say their venture in that revolution was a failure. And they want to have a worldwide revolution, which will also end in failure. And all the revolutions they've ever had, and they promised the poor people or the working people more, that they never got it, they were all failures. But why do people continue to buy their story hook, line, and sinker? It's because they control both sides. They control the capitalist side and they control the communist side. Both of them have an opposition of the Christian side and other people of decent family values and the Ten Commandments. All the religions of the world have different variations of the Ten Commandments. Did you know that? I took a comparable religion course in college, community college, taught by an Iranian teacher. So whoever doles out the commandments to this reality from the spiritual world, God, angels, whatever, apparently the commandments are all similar. And to me, they're common sense. Don't kill and steal and lie and be perversion, etc., etc., etc. To me, common sense. I was thinking about that today, basic science. Opposites attract and like repels. So when I was seeing this attractive girl walk by, and I couldn't help but notice she was attractive, I said to myself, there's a clear case of opposites attracting. Male attracted to female, and female attracted to male. But when females are attracted to females or males are attracted to males, obviously it's not the normal design of the human being. They are malfunctioning or have some kind of problem. But apparently, this satanic, communist, New Age cults want to teach the rest of us to be contrary to natural science, which says opposites attract. Just weirdly how I thought of that, of a basic scientific observation in all of physics. Opposites attract and like charges repel. And apparently it has everything to do with even animals and trees and bees and birds and all that. You need male and female plants and animals and fish to reproduce and lead a normal reality. But that's not what they want people to think. Their orders are that by mass murderer Lenin, whose rotting corpse lies pickled in a glass jar in Moscow, is to them to substitute for a god, to lie about the real nature of communism to you. So they're using communism, i.e. now they call it socialism or globalism, and they're trying to get people to have hatred towards nationalism, or patriotism. It is my belief that communism won't be destroyed until the carcass of Lenin is given a decent Christian burial. The Jews are a geographically international people, according to this author. The communists are a geographically international party. So would you consider what I'm reading and talking about by this book hate speech? Should this book and this material be banned? Leave a comment below. By this person who was in the military and working for local government and was fighting for truth and justice, just like some of the heroes you see on some of the TV programs and the movies. The Second Jewish World War, next highlighted portion in this book. Let us consider the Second Jewish World War from 1939 to 1945. All Hitler was doing was to rectify the injustices of the Versailles Treaty in 1919. So after World War I, a lot of the German territories were taken from them and given to Poland to create or enlarge Poland, given to Serbia, given to the different countries, the spoils of war. And then, of course, with the Germany suffering economically and then gathering some strength back, wanted to regain some of its territories. And actually, the problem was a lot simpler than that. Danzig, which was a city occupied by mostly German people, wanted to have access through Poland to Germany. But after World War I and Poland's arrogant attitude, they told Germany to get lost. We don't care. And they were forcing the issue because Poland wouldn't let the Germans in Danzig communicate with and travel to the Germans in Austria or Germany. And they were trying to rectify this in the world courts, but apparently Britain and other elites wanted to disregard anything Germany wanted. Not only that, probably wanted to, according to my research, irritate and instigate and start World War II. And I have plenty of material here, even in this book, that clearly shows that was the case. Britain went to war over Danzig. Just like I said, and the Polish corridor, which separated East Prussia from Germany. In the British Labour Party Speaker's Handbook for 1922, it was stated that Germany had every right to Danzig. So even after World War I, Danzig belonged to Germany, as it had been German for over 1,000 years. So the Germans wanted access to Prussia, Danzig. And even in the documents after World War I, in the British handbook, it said it was theirs. But in 1939, the British Labour Party, led by Conchies, I don't know what a Conchie is, Conchies, like Herbert Morrison, were among Britain's greatest warmongers. So there were warmongers back then after World War I, prior to World War II. What surprise is that? What had happened to Danzig in the intervening 17 years? The answer is that in 1922, Germany was firmly in the grip of the Jews. So after World War I, when they had the Versailles Treaty and hearings after World War I, it was predominantly dominated by Jewish people dictating the future of the Germans and Germany. Why was that when it was a war between Britain and Germany? Why did flocks of elite Jewish people from New York and elsewhere go there and pretty much control the situation and were completely ruthless to Germany? And this is common knowledge. But again, the truth is a dangerous thing to people who want a global world order. While Poland was governed by the nationalists. In 1939, Germany had liberated herself under Hitler from the Jews. Hence the Labour Party's amazing vote face over Danzig. November 7, out of the 11 members of the Polish cabinet are Jews. So in the Labour Party in Poland, the people who controlled Poland, out of 7 of the 11 members of the Polish cabinet were Jews. So Jews clearly dominated Poland. And Germany had right to access Prussia, Danzig, as dictated in the handbook after World War I. But remember, they wanted World War II. For another reason was the Balfour Agreement in World War I was an agreement between the Jews and Britain that if they won the war, because they were losing World War I with Germany, so an agreement was made, the Balfour Agreement, that the money and assistance from the Jews and their control of America, getting America in the war with all the propaganda to convince the American people. Because most of the immigrants in America at that time, the major portion of them were Germans. Did you know that? But propaganda goes a long ways, and then they create an incident like I just showed here with this ship, sinking it during World War I, blaming the Germans, saying it was a passenger ship when it wasn't, and the president declaring war on Germany and America. So were American citizens, Germans or not, supposed to think? We were deceived again, just like World War II and 9/11, and in so many other instances, like with the global warming, climate change, global cooling, biodiversity, sustainability. This is a vast nation. Somebody is sucking it dry, and that's me saying that. And billions and trillions, probably some number that you couldn't even add up, it's so great, of money has gone over to the Illuminati, Zionist, Jewish people to buy up pretty much everything in the world. Even Israel now is one of the predominantly locations for technologies. And they control probably a lot of the huge corporations all over the world. Even Tex Mars, sent me a little pamphlet saying the CEOs for most of these international corporations, if not all of them, were Jewish CEOs. And I looked it up, and he was right. I didn't believe it. A lot of this stuff here, if I'd have read this 10 years ago, I'd have thought it was crazy. But now that I know what I know and all the work I've done and videos I've shared, it's not crazy. It's concerning, especially when we can see what's happening now, like with Jade Helm 15 and the FEMA camps all over the United States and fields with coffins and the microwave transmitters coming online and dumping chemicals in the sky like they have done today. So what I'd like to do now is attach a few minutes of video I took this morning, Tuesday morning, in the mountains of North Carolina, of the chemicals that were dumped into the sky. I don't know what else to say, but unbelievable, almost inconceivable. But I saw it and I took the videos, but you watch the video and see what was dumped in the sky. And everything that I have just said with World War I, World War II, 9/11, a reading from this book, why do you think they're installing all the microwave transmitters and dumping all those chemicals, maybe biologicals, in the sky? Why, I ask? December 18th, a week before Christmas. Next week on Tuesday, it's Christmas. This is Tuesday, about 7:45 in the morning. I look up after I woke up and said, oh my, what the heck is going on? Seriously, people. What? Not only this, but if you can see it in this video, all kinds of ripples in this stuff, like it's been run through with a cheese slicer. See it? Which means electromagnetic energy. Now this is where the sun is rising. There it's coming up right now for your viewing pleasure. And for your breathing displeasure, all this stuff is being dumped. Look at this plane. He just started dumping. Nothing this way. And there he goes. He's doing it as we watch. Just started. Look. Way over here, nothing. But there it is. And there he goes. Ripples. Look at that. Ripples. Little ripples. Electromagnetic energy. This guy's going away. So that's where the sun is rising. Beautiful morning. Tuesday morning. 7:45. December 18th, 2018. But you think this is crazy? Nothing there, but way off towards the northeast, unlimited spraying. I can see the glow of planes. The sun shining off of one right there spraying. There's one spraying. Going into the tree. And these spray lines turn into this big fat cigar. Off towards the west, it's pretty clear, but the stuff is blowing towards the west. Unbelievable! All the ripples, electromagnetic energy. Sun is rising off towards the northeast. Tons of stuff dumped over the populations on the planet. Here in the mountains of North Carolina. My front porch view. The view of this geoengineering, weather control, an assault and an attack on population The birds and the bees and the trees and the water and the fish and the insects. They're spraying us like we're bugs. Are you a bug? I'm not a bug. What the heck? And it hasn't been spraying really noticeable in the last 3 or 4 days, or I would have made a video if you've been watching my videos. But all that changes today, a week before Christmas. Ripples, endless lines, southeast, northeast, blowing across the sky with the breeze, painting the sky pasty white with chemicals, maybe biologicals, and electromagnetic energies. I say, it can't be good for us. What do you say? Rick Miracle reporting on this Tuesday morning. Insane from the mountains of North Carolina as the sun comes up. We're being sprayed and sprayed. December 18th, at 9:41, an hour since I took a video. The results of all those dumped chemicals. The lines spread apart, as you can see. Painting the sky pasty white. Off towards the west, it's pretty clear, as you can see. But off towards the east, where they've been spraying, the stuff is blowing towards the west. So you can see the intention. Dump it into the wind, let it blow into the wind, and it disperses where you want it to go. All a controllable event. An intentional event. I can see jet planes spraying as I pan around. What are they doing in your neighborhood? Unbelievable! Seriously, unbelievable. You would think people would be running through the streets with pitchforks, chasing down the culprits, obviously sponsored and paid for by your tax dollars and the government. Why? Can't be good. None of what you see is clouds. None of what you see is clouds. I don't see a cloud in the sky. West, nothing. Stuff is blowing towards the west, as you can see, which means it falls to earth via gravity, gets in our bodies, our lungs, our bloodstream, our organs, our glands. And I saw plenty of evidence of electromagnetic energy. And up here you can see some kind of rainbow colors in the stuff, obviously chemicals. Here in the mountains of North Carolina, we're being sprayed like we're bugs. The sun is rising. Rick Miracle reporting. December 18th, about 10:35. Looking up at the sky, and I can see numerous jets spraying as I watch. Ripples in the stuff being dumped. I guess it's heavy metals with electromagnetic radiation. If the camera will zoom in and pick it up. So panning around, you can see what the sky spraying does. Plane right there spraying. Little short squirts like right there in the center of this video. What the heck are they doing? There's one spraying there, there's one spraying there. All kinds of spray lines, electromagnetic radiation evidence, one spraying right there. Somebody's busy this morning dumping chemicals in the sky, maybe biologicals. We don't know because they don't tell us. I guess we don't have a need to know. There's another one coming over the horizon. There's one right there. They're busy this morning. Tuesday morning, week before Christmas, 2018. So what do you think? All that stuff dumped in the sky, just incidental residue from jet planes, all in one area of the sky? Or is there some controlled geoengineering going on, some control of the weather, some toxins dumped in the sky, causing problems with vegetation, water, we the people, the animals? I was looking at another video that was kind of concerning, and I keep talking about the surveillance system and the microwave transmitter towers everywhere and the coming global world order. And a lot of people maybe find it difficult to believe that it could be a reality. But watch this. It looks like it is a reality now in China. Can we expect this here in the USA, in Europe, Brazil, the world? Go watch this video on YouTube, China Behavior Rating System versus Sweden microchip implants, must-watch technology.
The government here says it is trying to purify society by rewarding those who are trustworthy and punishing those who are not. So like the credit score that most Americans get for how they handle their finances, Chinese citizens are now getting social credit scores.
The social credit rating system began testing 5 years ago in approximately 30 Chinese cities. It will be rolled out across the entire country by 2020.
So now, the government is tracking citizens' behavior from smoking on a train to jaywalking. If one score drops low enough, they could be denied travel or buying an apartment.
When Liu Hu recently tried to book a flight, he was told he was banned from flying because he's on the list of untrustworthy people. Liu is a journalist who was ordered by a court to apologize for a series of tweets he wrote and was then told his apology was insincere. I can't buy property. My child can't go to private school, he says. You feel you're being controlled by the list all the time. And the list is now getting longer, as every Chinese citizen is being assigned a social credit score. Nearly 15 million people have already been prevented from traveling.
The process made possible thanks to the collection of masses of data in all areas of its citizens' private and public life, and it is set to be implemented nationally in 2020.
China's growing network of surveillance cameras makes all of this possible. The country already has an estimated 176 million cameras. This knows every person, every bike, every car, every bus.
You can tell whether it is an adult, a child, a male or female. It can recognize more than 4,000 vehicles.
Is there any doubt that they're planning this for the USA and Europe and the world? Should be concerning to anybody. All right, before I get back to the book, I want to bring up one more topic again. The Great Depression. Human suffering. If you want to do an interesting analysis, go look at the dates. And look at the timing of the Great Depression. 1930 to 1940, just before World War II, and it was worldwide, the Great Depression. So obviously, if they controlled the Federal Reserve here in the USA and the banks all over the world prior to World War II, and there was a lot of agitation and calling for the destruction of Germany, trying to get World War II started, look what they did to the economy. They had to withdraw money from society, raised the interest rates. They were in control of the banking system. Nobody can deny that. The Illuminati, Zionist, elitist Jews took over the USA money supply in 1913, December 21st, a winter solstice, an occult satanic holiday. So when the whole thing goes this crazy, the timing before World War II and the suffering and depression worldwide is kind of obvious. Who controls the thermostat of money? They did. Who caused the Great Depression and World War II? They did. So when I read from this book, keep this stuff in the back of our mind. What's going on? Dumping stuff in the sky, surveillance, controlling the people in China. I'm sure they're doing it in the USA right now, but it's kind of covert. In other words, people are not really paying attention that these systems are coming online and paying attention to everything that you and I do. So when will they cause the economy to go into a Great Depression again? And apparently they had a depression before World War I. And of course, took over the USA money supply 6 months before World War I. Installed their President Woodrow Wilson before World War I. And now we have President Donald Trump and a lot of agitation and a lot of weird things going on. And the stock market tanking a little bit. When will the big one happen? Questions I ask myself. All right, back to the book. So 7 out of 11 members of the Polish cabinet were Jews, and this was in the Daily Worker newspaper, May 20th, 1947. So Jews helped Poland come about, took some land from Germany, and the people who were sitting on the cabinet after World War II were predominantly Jewish people. And they were gloatingly boasted that even verbal anti-Semitism was a criminal offense in the new communist state of Poland. So I leave it to my readers to guess who rules Poland now. And I'll leave it to my viewers on my videos. Who do you suppose controls the world now? And this was written in 1951, The Bloody Red Streak by Trefor David. One can, of course, argue that 360,000 young British lads in the prime of life did indeed die for Poland. But it was not to stop the Germans from having Poland, but to stop the Poles themselves from having Poland. So isn't that crazy? They brought us World War II to prevent the Germans from having Poland, and now it appears the Jews who control the world back in 1951, 1947 got Poland. All right, continuing on. So no wonder it says here that the Poles in Britain are afraid to return to Poland. How many people know this? Would it not have been wiser in 1939 to allow Germany to carry out her traditional policy of driving towards the east to smash up the citadel of Jewish communism in Russia? Remember, the Bolshevik Jews invaded Russia after World War I, when Russia was caught off guard and it was weakened. And apparently Germany was trying to eliminate the Jewish control of the regions, and at the same time liberating the Russian Christians from their horrible yoke. And you can go on to Jeff Rentz's website and look up 100 million Christians and other good people were slaughtered in Russia after the invasion after World War I, the Bolshevik so-called revolution. What can we people of the world expect when we can see what they've done and are doing in China right now, and what they're preparing to do here in the USA right now? While we in Britain remain strictly neutral, rearming and consolidating our bases in the empire in the event Hitler ultimately turned on us. As it was, we chucked in the BEF, British Empire forces, beside a rotting Jewish-ridden France, led by wealthy incest lovers like the Jew Leon Blum. That's what it says here. I just read and research and try to learn, and that's what I'm sharing. I don't want to go saying these things. I'm reading from this book. Several times Prime Minister, only to lose all our equipment before the German onslaught. Had Germany then invaded us, we would only have had 2 Canadian divisions to oppose them. So remember, Britain owns Canada. So you can't say the British Empire wasn't in expansion mode. That's why they had World War I, because of the incredible growth and success of Germany and its expansionism. How many people know that? So it wasn't hard for the Jewish Illuminati Zionist elite to get the war going when they controlled the money supply. Getting the agitation and the frustrations in World War II, especially what I showed you with the Great Depression all over the world. They controlled the money. They can turn the heat up. They can cause the pain and suffering, and they have. They crashed the stock market here in the USA again. It will have been intentional. Make no mistake about that. That's what I believe. Anyways, it says here another highlighted title. Jews admit it was a Jewish war. So a lot of people quote the things that these people say, and then they call you anti-Semite if you're not a Jew and you quote it. They can say it, but we can't say it. The Jews themselves make no secret of the fact that the recent war was a Jewish one in its entirety. Consider these statements by Jews on it. The Jew Shalom Arch in a pep talk to French troops. In the line written in the French newspaper Les Nouvelles Littéraires of 10 February 1940 at the beginning of World War II. This is a Jewish person speaking. This is our war, meaning the Jews. You are fighting it out for all of us. Even if we Jews are not bodily with you in the trenches, we are nevertheless morally with you. It says here a note. Note, I did not mention many Jews with us in my years in the trenches in France in 1914 to 1918. TD. So the author says when he was in the war, between the First World War, 1914 to 1918, he said he did not notice many Jews with us in the many years in the trenches. The Rabbi Richhorn wrote on July 1st, 1880, in the periodical La Contemporaine. This is what a rabbi said in 1880. Listen up. We shall drive the Christians into war, by exploiting their national vanity and stupidity. They will then massacre each other, thus giving room for our own people. The Jew Marcus Eli Revenge wrote, among other things, in the periodical, the Century Magazine USA, January 1928, after World War I, "We have stood at the back of not only the last war, but all your wars. We have stood at the back of, and not only the last war, but of all your wars, not only the Russian, but of all your revolutions, worthy of mention in your history." And I keep saying these people were behind the Civil War, the revolution in the United States in the 1860s. And here's this Jewish guy saying it in a magazine, they were behind all of them. The Jew Emil Ludwig Kohn wrote in Las Annuals in June 1943, "Hitler will not have war." So he's saying Hitler doesn't want a war. Hitler will have no war, but he will be forced to it. This is World War II now. This is what this Jew Emil Ludwig wrote in a Los Angeles magazine newspaper, that he's going to force Hitler into World War II. And they had the ear of Britain. They controlled the money supply. They had controlled Churchill. They controlled the President of the United States. They controlled the propaganda machine, the newspapers, the radio. And they were going to force a war. It says it right here by a well-known Jewish author. Not this year, but later on. The Jewish professor A. Kuchler published on October 1937, just prior to World War II, a call to the democratic press the world over. Germany is the enemy of Judaism and must be pursued with deadly hatred. Now, wait a minute. World War I, between the Brits and Germany. The Jews had escaped Russia. A lot of them went to Germany and were surviving and thriving. It's where the banksters got started, the Rothschilds, in Germany. But then during the war, when Britain was losing, the Jews decided to turn traitor on Germany, even dropping leaflets from planes saying to all the Jewish people that support Britain. This is in Germany, they're dumping the leaflets. Support Britain because after we win the war, they're going to give us the Palestinian land to create the state of Israel, the Balfour Agreement. So the Jews turned traitor on Germany in World War I. So they had a deadly hatred of Germany because the Germans found out at the Versailles Treaty hearings about the betrayal. How would you feel? The watchword of Judaism today is a merciless campaign against all German peoples and the complete destruction of the nation. This is prior to World War II. The Jew Vladimir Jabotinsky, leading Zionist, wrote in his book, Die Judaism Grundfront, 1940, beginning of World War II, when the National Socialists and their friends cry or whisper that this war is brought about by the Jews, they are perfectly right. So this author, Trefor David, who was in the war, World War I, as he said here, worked for local government and was quite an activist. So obviously some kind of a person who read and quoted stuff in magazines and newspapers. Didn't have the internet back then. So he did physical work. He had this stuff. And in all the videos I've made, I was thinking about this yesterday. I don't see anybody in the comment section saying that what I'm saying, these book reviews I'm doing, saying that they're wrong. It just seems the powers that be that are trying to bring us a global world order are just so far, for now, just ignoring people who are trying to get the word out about this coming global world order and the coming online of the beast computer system, artificial intelligence, and microwave transmitter, facial recognition systems coming online, compiling data on everything we do, books we buy, TV programming we probably watch, credit cards, debit cards, everything you do. I notice it's much more difficult to even deposit a check into the bank anymore. Why would they want to see my driver's license for me to deposit a check into my bank account? Not even asking for any cash. It's just something weird going on in the world. But look at China. The Jewish magazine, The Sentinel of Chicago, wrote in its issue October 8, 1942, as follows. The Second World War is being fought for the defense of the fundamentals of Judaism. So I'm going to switcheroo this word Judaism. The Second World War is being fought for the defense of the fundamentals of the synagogue of Satan, if the Bible's correct. And all the symbols, the devil statues they put in our cities in the USA right now. And all the other propaganda and social conditioning. So it's in defense of this new age, the synagogue of Satan, the cult, mystery, Babylon religion, and the destruction of Christianity. So I was thinking about, and I mentioned the Great Depression prior to World War II, and who was behind it. Well, in this book, there's even further information that should tell us all who was controlling the economy back then and what they did to the USA and the world with the Great Depression. It was horrible. Make no mistake about it. The Jewish gold standard was another aim of the last war. Another war aim of the Allies in the recent war was the maintenance of the gold standard. I do not need to tell my readers who owns all the gold in the world. This guy wrote this book in 1951. I do not need to tell my readers either that all your parties, whether communist or conservative, Democrats or Republicans, I added those two words, work the gold racket. You remember the announcement in the press recently that Russia had rigidly placed the ruble on a gold basis, confirmed in the Daily Worker of the 12th February 1951. It will also be remembered that Churchill, who proudly boasts that he has always been the constant architect of the Jews' future, returned Britain to the gold standard in 1925, which led to the ghastly slump of 1921 to 1930. Exactly what I've been saying about the Great Depression and who's responsible for it. Wikipedia, you can look it up and check the dates there. Exactly what's in this book. All the human suffering back then. The Great Depression. You read enough of this stuff, you start to get a handle on what really happened in history. And that kind of tells you what's happening now and what's going to happen. Look at China. Look at all the control and violence and destruction all over the world. What will they have to do here in the USA to bring about this huge change? They're hoping they can just continue to do it gradually. Like throwing a frog into warm water. And it doesn't jump out, but if you turn up the heat, it doesn't seem to be able to escape or leap. But if you throw a frog into boiling hot water, it'll jump out immediately. So if people knew really what was going on, they would do something immediately. But with the warm water slowly getting hotter and hotter, people don't seem to notice the changes that are taking place with all the propaganda and legislation changes and police activity. All right. He was violently attacked by Philip Snowdon in 1925 on behalf of the labor opposition for not having returned sooner. Similarly, the Jewish-dominated Labor Party won in 1923 the general election on an anti-protection ticket, i.e., they did not want British industries and British mines protected against Jew-financed cheap foreign goods and coal. So there has been a war going on for a couple hundred years, and it's going on right now. And there's an end game to this war. And it's vying on destroying Christianity and bringing us an enslaved world where everybody is like in the Hunger Games movie, maybe. Or much worse, and they also want a population reduction, seriously, of billions of people. How will they do that? Should we be asking that question? The argument against gold is that being a scarce metal, if one's currency is based on it, currency is naturally scarce. There may be plenty of food in the shops, raw materials, and labor in the land, but insufficient currency because that currency is regulated by a metal too scarce to finance either full bellies or full unemployment. Hence, we always had at least 1 million unemployed between 1919 and 1939. So getting the world on the gold standard, which was scarce to get enough gold to justify the dollars or whatever, pounds or rubles. So you didn't have enough money, hence at least 1 million people were unemployed prior to World War II, in between World War I and World War II. While our currency was regulated by gold, and the highest percentage was in Wales, do not be misled by the lie that Britain went off the gold standard in 1931. All that happened was we had a measure of depreciation. In time of war, of course, Britain went completely off gold and spent something like her real spending power, 15 million pounds a day. 15 million pounds a day. That's probably like $20 million a day. And today's money, it's probably like $500 million a day. In killing her German brothers. So they were spending something like $500 million in today's money in killing their German brothers. And then the life of world Jewry was at stake. That's different, of course. Why can't we spend 15 million pounds a day in peacetime on improving the conditions of the British working class? Why can we only spend it when fighting wars for the Jews? And another irony there is, as we all know, they control the Fed, Federal Reserve Bank, and the money and the stock market and everything else. So our government has to borrow money from these people to fight wars. And as it says in this book, they have to fight. They're fighting Jewish wars for this global world order to destroy Christianity. What's ironic is we're paying for it, borrowing money from them to fight their wars. Do you get it? Hitler went off the gold standard completely, both internally and externally. Initially, he printed enough money to dissolve in a very short time his 7 million unemployed, which he inherited in 1933, and also gave them 3 square meals a day for the first time in their lives. So, that demon Hitler, he got off the gold standard, printed money, and he started feeding and employing all the people. How devilishly smart he was. But plainly, the secondary war aim of the Allies was to save the gold standard. And I do believe the Illuminati elite banksters were behind Hitler, as well as behind the communist opposition, just like they always are. just like they control the Republicans and the Democrats in the United States, and probably the same thing in other countries all over the planet. There are about 400 international financiers, mostly Jews, who between them in 1939 had cornered $7 trillion worth of gold. Were Hitler's economies to be copied by the rest of the world to the vast benefit of their hordes of unemployed, those 400 men stood to lose $7 trillion in gold, which would become useless scrap metal overnight. Think about that. And think about the fact from 1850 to 1913, when the Rothschilds elites regained control of the American money supply by creating the Federal Reserve with their installed president, Woodrow Wilson. 3 or 4 presidents, there were assassination attempts on them, and 2 of them were killed. So they were trying to get control of the USA money supply. But some smart politicians in the mid-1800s withdrew their right to do it, did not renew their corporation. So they were kind of ticked off. And what did they do? They brought us the Civil War in the United States. Oh, the evil they did again and again and again. Does anybody believe it won't happen again? That they're all just going to go home and enjoy themselves in their new country, Israel. And recently, President Donald Trump saying the USA recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, fulfilling a huge goal of theirs and prophecy. All right, it says here the present position. Now we are no longer on the internal gold standard, but all our foreign trade is regulated by the dollar standard. But as dollars and gold are interchangeable, this is the gold standard as before. Hitler used barter trading for any foreign trade necessary and short-circuited the great Jewish international trading houses. So Hitler was using bartering and bypassing the money system. The trading houses, the Jewish international trading houses, which exercise such a deadly stranglehold on all foreign trade, both today and before the war. So no wonder they hated Germany so much. And Germany was predominantly white people. So apparently, and it was a Christian nation. There are masses of food and raw material in the world, but the democracies haven't enough dollars or gold for them to be made available to their peoples. We return to this dollar gold standard by accepting the American loan and the Bretton Woods Agreement in Parliament on 13 December 1945. So this author, of course, is British, and he's talking about when he says we, the British, which, needless to say, the communists heartily supported. Gallacher, Perrotin, Pritt, Pratt, Mills, Soley, and Silverman, Brothers, Drigberg, and all the other cryptos. You know what a crypto is? Somebody who pretends they're Christian but are really Jewish. Cryptos. Cryptos, communists, and pinks in Parliament were to be found in the I lobby voting for the American loan and the Bretton Woods Agreement. See Hansard, 13 December 1945. Now the communists pretend they do not like being tied to American capitalism. Listen up to this. Although they themselves voted for it in the first place. The communists voted for the American loan and the Bretton Woods Agreement because these measures smashed wide open the great empire trading bloc established by the Ottawa Imperial Preference Agreement in 1932. It's all about these banksters and trading houses and global control. You can see why they want a global world order. All the peoples on the planet will be workers, and the unwanted ones will be disposed of, and the ones that are left to live and work will be under intense surveillance and reward and punishment system. Maybe the people of the world need to get used to this. They kind of already are training us. You go get certain cards from certain stores and they give you points when you spend there, or gas and all that. And even the credit cards give you rewards and cash back and all that. So they're getting everybody used to doing things the way they want you to do them. And if you don't do it, they punish you. And apparently in China, if you're not a perfect citizen thinking like how they want you to think, they give you some demerits, and you can't get on a train or a plane or probably rent a house or buy a house or get a job or anything. Fulfilling biblical prophecy. You won't be able to buy or sell if you don't have the mark of the beast. Swear allegiance to the Lucifer satanic deity, the Antichrist. It all seems to be a fact according to my research. Please, if you think I'm wrong, point it out in the comment section where I can go find a book that says I'm wrong, that proves I'm wrong. Not Snoops, of course, and a couple other websites. Everything that comes out they say is not true. So if you're a researcher, don't believe. I've had people do that before. I've said this happened or that happened, and they immediately jumped on their computer, went to Snoops and said, look here, it says it's not true, and brush you aside. In fact, Britain lost her empire to Wall Street, Jewish finance, making a middle way between America and Russia difficult, if not impossible. Now the communists try and separate Britain from America, in which case Britain, no longer having an empire to fall back on economically, will be forced willy-nilly into the arms of Uncle Joe Stalin. All right, continuing on. The next title is Jews Against Economic Nationalism. Remember Nazis? They made it into an evil word. Sounds evil, Nazi. The N means national. Nationalism, which means being patriotic to one's country, versus the international Jewish globalism. Just saying. Could we have some things wrong with this World War II and World War I? Hitler wasn't around as a leader in World War I. I think he was a private or something in the army. Another point worth remembering about the economic aims of the Allies in the last war was their intention to smash the policy of economic nationalism advocated not only by Hitler, but by all nationalist parties, including those in Britain. In 1938, the City of London financiers, again predominantly Jewish, who would have thunk that, had invested in cheap labor foreign countries the gigantic sum of $3,600,000,000 of good British money. This was admitted in the last Parliament. So who controls the British Parliament? Scary answer, maybe? To an important question. Who controls Britain? Who controls Germany right now? Of course, the Zionist, elitist, Illuminati, banksters, etc. The globalists do. And they control the US, and they're setting up all these systems, beast computer systems, surveillance systems, even systems maybe that can target people and kill them, microwave transmission systems, directed energy weapons, artificial intelligence in the computer system. So it will not be humans making these decisions to zap you or me. When they turn a certain switch and put into execution a certain software program, oh boy, what's in that code, that software? What can that app do? Maybe they're connected to our cell phones. Certainly, nice little tracking devices. You lose your phone, there's an app where you can find where your phone is, which means they can find out where you are, and I am, all of us. And they're monitoring everything we do, so they are metadata tagging us. The three simple symbols are green, yellow, and red. And apparently red means you're dead when they execute that certain artificial intelligence software program and begin the worldwide revolution. Again, I ask, tell me where I'm wrong. I'm reading the words on these pages of all these books and magazines and research materials, listening to comments from the viewers, and I'm even going off in directions when you guys who watch my videos advise me of things. I go look it up. Good portion of my videos lately comes from the material people suggest to me. Tells you what kind of guy I am, what my motive is. My motive is to find the truth, the real truth. WTH, what the heck is going on? All right, so the Jews who controlled Britain are spending trillions of dollars outside the country on cheap labor. But a lot of us are aware of that. They did so because the cheap labor of these countries got them bigger profits and bigger dividends more quickly than if the money had been invested in the more highly paid labor of the British and the Empire. You can add America to this, and apparently the troubles in Brazil and Peru and Argentina and Italy, the world. More often than not, these huge investments were actually equipping Britain's foreign competitors against Britain herself, causing hordes of unemployment and bringing ruin to the many honest British nationalists. So as I'm reading this, we can see what the cause of the Great Depression was, where the money was being spent so the people back home couldn't feed their kids. You can go look this up on Wikipedia. But the Jewish financiers didn't mind. The most that would happen would be that unemployment might turn to communism. So if they bring about this Great Depression, people will beg for communism, beg for the Chinese system of being under surveillance and control. You think that's part of the plan? So they didn't care if there was a lot of unemployment. The people will turn to communism, which was a Jewish confidence trick and would suit their book admirably. And if the communists were to nationalize any Jewish capitalist, they would at once reinstate him as a commissioner. So the capitalists, powerful people, elites, corporations, they work for these Jewish Zionist communists, globalists. And in Russia, commissioners have the power of life and death over their workers. The power of life and death over you and me. Powers which even in the disgraceful epoch of child labor in the mines, British capitalists never had. The nationalist parties of Britain, which would inevitably have succeeded to power had there been no war, in 1939, made it a cardinal point of their policy immediately to sell out $3,600,000,000 and to reinvest it in the British and Empire industries. So the people, the nationalists, were gaining power in Britain, and they would have turned the tide on the Jewish banksters who were spending money in third world countries, getting cheap labor for cheap products, and they would have lost their shirts had they not started World War II. Oh my. So now you know why they instigated all these turmoils and agitation, feeding arms to China to make things ugly for Japan, etc. Even feeding agitation to the Poland people against Germany and Serbia and Turkey and all the other countries, Belgium. They work behind the scenes. They put certain people into positions of politics to run things. Psychopathic maniacs in charge. What do you think? What's going on today? According to some of the things I see in the news with today's politicians, it certainly seems like they're mentally ill. In other words, the British people stood to gain $3,600,000,000 were their nationalist parties to achieve power in Britain. We all remember how the Ronda suffered because of Jewish finance in the city of London preferred investing their money in cheaper labor, Polish coal mines, rather than in Wales. Do not for a moment imagine that the communists intend to do anything about this. They are Jewish-led and Jewish-financed, and if they intend to soak the rich of all, it will only be the rich Gentiles. All right, the last section I'm going to read out of this book for this video. Money from Russia. Although British communists deny that they have ever received money from Russia, they are allowed by Lenin to use lies to us non-communists, so we need not take them too serious. Douglas Hyde, for 20 years a British communist and for 8 years on the staff of the Daily Worker, where he became its new editor, has stated on page 7 of his book, The Answer to Communism, that Russia gave the British Communist Party money to start it off, and the last being in 1923. So they had the Bolshevik Jewish Revolution in Russia. They took over Russia, killed about 100 million Christians, according to Jeff Rentz's website. And 25 million admitted in a Jewish popular newspaper. And then they were sponsoring communism all over the world. And they also controlled the banking systems and the politicians all over the world. Republican, Democratic parties, Labor parties. So they were controlling the communists and controlling the capitalists. And everybody's taking sides, not really knowing. They're just playing their part. And the puppet masters telling them what to think and say and do. True or false? If you're educated, that's a rhetorical question. Obviously, it's true. They control everything. And they're the ones who wrote the software, the AI, artificial intelligence, and are installing all these systems. Microwave systems, facial recognitions, beast computers, monitoring everything we do, controlling the politicians, controlling the stock market, controlling the military, controlling the news, media, newspapers, magazines, TV programming, movies, everything. School systems, the lyrics and words in the songs that become popular. Designer satanic songs. There's a new term I just invented. Further, both Arthur Hormer and Harry Pulloff have boasted that Russia has sent our miners a further £250,000 to assist them in strikes. So the communist Russia is sending the miners who are going on strike £125,000 so they can stay on strike. The communists were sponsoring and supporting this economic destruction in Britain. What else is new? Now you know where the Great Depression came from. Here are their actual words. Arthur Hormer, on the front page of the Daily Worker. I've got to get some of these Daily Worker magazines, I guess. October 14th, 1948. It was thanks to the help received from miners abroad that British miners are able to hold out in their strikes in 1921 to 1926. It was thanks above all to the help of the Soviet Union, which sent us more than £1 million sterling. And I have had another thought I think about periodically because of what we know about President Putin of Russia today, 2018, and how seemingly he seems to be portraying the part of the good guy right now. But I wonder, because to me, in my mind, the Zionist Illuminati, after the Bolshevik Revolution took over that country, controlled the money systems of the world. I do not believe they do not control Russia today. I believe they do control Russia today, and it's all a part being played. So when there's all this threat of a nuclear holocaust or wars and all that in China, these elites control it. And if it happens, it'll be part of their strategic chess game to bring about a global world order and fulfill biblical prophecy. It is a satanic synagogue of Satan movement. So it seems. And Harry Pullet, in a signed article on the Daily Worker of January 17, 1951, the miners of Britain have not forgotten that in 1926 the Soviet workers sent 1.25 million unconditionally to the British miners in response to the appeal of the Miners' Federation for assistance during the Great Lockout. Speaking as a better Welshman than Harry Pullet or than Moscow's stooge Arthur Homer, I say that the miners in Wales want no Soviet gold or interference in their eternal affairs and struggles, gold acquired at the expense of slave labor of Christians in Russia. So remember, they controlled Russia. And from 1917, 18 till 28, 10 years, even more, there was a systematic killing of Christians and taking their properties and destroying the Christian churches in Russia. This is no small thing, I keep saying. And the hatred for Christians still is just as much as it was then. Obviously, from the things we see in our social conditioning, the media and all that. The real cause of the 1926 and 1921 was the international Jewish finance system, which I have briefly outlined in the section dealing with the recent war above. As we now know, the Jewish international finance is at the back of communism, creating slumps on purpose to plunge the world into communism. So just exchange the word communism for globalism or new age. It's all propaganda, all deception. The communist slave labor system gives Jewish finance bigger and quicker profits than the more highly paid and trade union protected labor of democracy. Well, that's all I can read out of this book. There's much more. And again, you can go to archive.org, the Bloody Red Streak, Trefor David. And I did look up about his background. So what do you think? You think Trefor David was right on target and he got it right? Or was he completely wrong and some kind of anti-Semite racist or something? Seriously, what do you think? Leave a comment below. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.